Hi, my name is Emma Winger, and this is my Children's Literature Unit 8 discussion. It is over The Little House by Virginia Lee Burton. So the characterization of this book, it's basically a little house on the countryside, and years go by and the countryside turns into an urban city. What was once green grass and natural surroundings turned into large landscapers and loud train stations. The little house grew shabbier and shabbier with each passing day. Soon enough, the little house disliked living in the developing city and returned home to the country. So basically the setting starts out in the country and it ends in the country, and then as the book develops, it kind of turns into the urban city. So the point of view is in third person, and it's basically like the narrator talking about the house, and it'd be like if you were looking down at the house and like watching its life. So now I'm gonna give a little summary of the book. So here we go. The Little House by Virginia Lee Burton. So I'm just gonna read a few pages and like summarize and whatnot. Once upon a time, there was a little house way out in the country. She was a pretty little house. I don't know if you can see the book, it's kind of glaring. It's a pretty little house, and she was strong and well built. The man who built her so well said, "This little house shall never be sold for gold or silver, and she will live to see our great-great-grandchildren's great-great-grandchildren living in her." The little house was very happy as she sat on the hill and watched the countryside around her. She watched the sun rise in the morning, and she watched the sunset in the evening. Day followed day, each one a little different from the one before, but the little house stayed just the same. In the nights, she watched the moon grow from a thin new moon to a full moon, then back again to a thin old moon. And when there was no moon, she watched the stars way off in the distance. She could see the lights of the city. The little house was curious about the city and wondered what it would be like to live there. So basically, near the beginning of the story, she's just living in the countryside, enjoying her life. And then she kind of begins to be curious about like city life. And the seasons go by, which is spring, summer, fall, winter. And then one day, the little house was surprised to see a horseless carriage coming down the winding country road. Pretty soon, there were more of them on the road and fewer carriages pulled by horses. Pretty soon, along came some surveyors and surveyed a line in front of the little house. Pretty soon, along came a stream shovel and dug a road through the hill covered with daisies. Then some trucks came and dumped big stones on the road, then some trucks with little stones, and then trucks with tar and sand, and finally a steam roller came and rolled it all smooth, and the road was done. So basically, society is starting to develop more. So like transportation and stuff and technology is developing. So like it's starting to turn to a city, and it just keeps developing basically. So the roads, there's more roads being built, there's more like towns being built and whatnot. And then at this point, it's like a huge city, and the house kind of gives its opinion here about the city. Now it was not so quiet and peaceful at night. Now the lights of the new city were bright and very close, and the street lights shone all night. This must be living in the city, thought the little house, and didn't know whether she liked it or not. She missed the field of daisies and the apple trees dancing in the moonlight. So she kind of starting to miss her old life because of all the noisiness of the new city and whatnot. So this is just more development basically of the city. Trains started being like railroads and stuff. And it just kept expanding. story went on, the house kept getting more sad because of all the hecticness with all the people and whatnot. So this is just the story development. Then one fine morning in spring, along came the great-great-granddaughter of the man who built the little house so well. She saw the shabby little house, but she didn't hurry by. There was something about the little house that made her stop and look again. She said to her husband, "That little house looks just like the little house my grandmother lived in when she was a little girl. Only that little house was way out in the country, on a hill covered with daisies and apple trees growing around." So at this point, like, we kind of come back to the beginning of the story where it said that the grandchild was going to find the house, and they found it in the city. So they decided to take the house back to where it belonged. And at first, when they were taking it back, the house was kind of scared to go back. But in the end, she says that she enjoys it. So we'll read this part. The windows and shutters were fixed, and once again they painted her a lovely shade of pink. As the little house settled down on her new foundation, she smiled happily. Once again she could watch the sun and moon and stars. Once again she could watch spring and summer and fall and winter come and go. Once again she was lived in and taken care of. So that's the end of the story. The little house. She finally gets to go back to her roots, and she is happy with her life in the countryside. Even though she got to experience the urban life, she kind of went back to where she came from. So I would say the theme of this story is basically development is good, and getting to learn new experiences and be surrounded by new places is good, but it's also good to also return back to your roots and where you came from. So how does this influence society? How does society in America influence the contemporary realistic fiction books? So basically this is nature versus human interaction. So it's just basically all the advances that we have over time, for example, when there were no more horse carriages going by the little house, and there started to be cars and then trains and then so forth. And it's just the advances in technology kind of go, this book kind of relates that to the nowadays and relating it to our societal norms nowadays. So yeah. And then I'm gonna link this YouTube video to my slides.